The list had 7 names on it. Marcus Hale saw it the moment he walked through the front door. Taped to the refrigerator with a single strip of masking tape, slightly crooked, written in his son's handwriting. 7 names, each one crossed out with a red marker. Hard, deliberate lines, the kind a man draws when he wants to make sure something stays dead. He stood in the kitchen doorway with his suitcase still in his hand and read every name. He did not recognize any of them. He did not need to. The red lines told him everything. He set the suitcase down near the wall and walked further into the house. It was a big house, bigger than Marcus expected, though he had seen pictures. High ceilings, wide hallways, doorways wider than normal, the kind of architecture that does not happen by accident. The floors were smooth hardwood, no rugs, no raised edges anywhere. Every surface had purpose. The house had been built to move through cleanly, efficiently, without resistance. It looked nothing like the apartment Derek had grown up in. Marcus walked past the kitchen, past the long dining table with only one chair pulled close to it, past the framed certificates on the wall that he slowed down to read but did not stop for. He kept walking until he reached the room at the back of the house where the sound was coming from. 3 monitors, keyboards, a voice on a speaker, some kind of business call, someone talking about freight rates and delivery windows and port delays. And there was Derek. His son was 34 years old, and he sat in a power wheelchair the color of dark chrome, positioned in the center of the room like he owned everything in it, which he did. He was wearing a pressed shirt. His posture was straight, his eyes were on the center screen, and his jaw was tight, and he was working, the way he always worked, the way he had worked even as a boy, like the work was the only thing between him and something worse. He had not heard Marcus come in. Marcus stood in the doorway and looked at his son for a long moment. The desk beside Derek had 2 empty water bottles on it, a food wrapper from something ordered 2 days ago, still sitting there like no one had thought to move it, a half-drunk cup of coffee gone cold. He looked at all of it. Then he looked at Derek again. The call ended. Derek moved to another screen, started typing something. Still had not turned around. "I know you're there," Derek said. His voice was even, flat, no surprise in it. Marcus walked into the room. Door was unlocked. "I know." Derek did not turn. "I got a notification the moment you pulled into the driveway." "Smart house." "Smart enough?" A pause. "You drove 4 hours. 4.5. There was construction near the state line." Derek's hands stopped on the keyboard. Just for a second. Then they started again. "I didn't ask you to come." "I know you didn't." "I'm serious, Dad." "I know you are." The typing stopped again. This time it did not start back up. Derek turned the chair around slowly and looked at his father, and for one brief moment the flat expression cracked just slightly at the edges, the way ice cracks before it decides whether to hold or give. Then it sealed back up. His eyes dropped to the suitcase Marcus had carried in from the hallway. "Don't," Derek said. Marcus looked around the room, at the cold coffee, at the food wrapper, at the 3 screens still glowing with spreadsheets and emails, and things that needed attention, at his son, sharp and pressed and working, and alone. He walked back to the kitchen. He threw away the food wrapper he had passed on the way in. He found the coffee pot, rinsed it, and put a fresh one on. He opened the refrigerator and looked at what was inside, which was not much. A container of something from a few days ago, some condiments, 2 bottles of water, a carton of eggs that still had a few left. He closed the refrigerator the way a man closes a door on a room he is already planning to fix. He found the pan under the stove. He found the eggs. He found butter on the counter. He cooked. Derek did not come out of the office for 20 minutes. When he did, he came in quietly, the hum of the chair barely audible on the hardwood. He stopped at the edge of the kitchen and watched his father put a plate on the table, the part of the table closest to the gap where a wheelchair could pull up without a chair in the way. He had noticed that. Marcus had. Without saying anything about it. "You don't know anything about my situation," Derek said. Marcus sat down across from the empty space with his own plate. "I know you've run through 7 assistants in what? 3 months? 4 months. 7 people in 4 months. Derek moved to the table and positioned the chair at the gap. He looked at the plate. Eggs and toast, simple and hot. He picked up the fork. They weren't good enough. All 7 of them. All 7 of them. Marcus ate a bite, said nothing. They were trained, Derek said. The agency said they were trained. 2 of them had certifications. What happened to them? Derek's jaw moved. They couldn't keep up. Marcus nodded slowly, the way a man nods when he is storing a word for later instead of using it now. He picked up his coffee. You eaten today? This morning. What time is it now? Derek glanced at the clock on the wall. It was nearly 6 in the evening. He looked back at his plate and ate without answering. They finished the meal without talking much. Marcus cleared the table. Derek watched him do it without offering direction, which itself was a form of observation, waiting to see how the man moved in a space that wasn't his. Marcus washed both plates, dried them, put them back where he had found them. There's a spare room down the hall, Derek said finally. You can stay there. Marcus dried his hands on the dish towel. I know. I already put my bag in it. Derek looked at him. Something crossed his face, not quite amusement, not quite irritation. Something that couldn't make up its mind. You're not staying long, he said. Okay, Marcus said. I mean it. I heard you. Derek turned the chair and went back to his office. Marcus listened to the sound of the keyboard starting up again. He picked up his coffee, sat down at the kitchen table alone, and looked at the refrigerator where the list of 7 names still hung in its crooked masking tape frame. He read them again, one by one. Then he got up, walked to the refrigerator, and took the list down. He folded it once, neatly, and set it on the counter. He did not throw it away. He did not put it back. He just removed it from the place where it had been staring at the room like a trophy of damage. He found a notepad in the drawer near the stove. He wrote down a list of groceries. Basic things. Real things. The kind of list a person makes when they are planning to be somewhere for more than a day. He did not tell Derek he was making it. He did not need to. The refrigerator had already done the talking. Marcus Hale was 58 years old. He had worked union electrical jobs for 31 years and had the hands to prove it. Thick-knuckled, scarred at the knuckles, the kind of hands that knew how to hold things that were heavy and hot and difficult. He had raised 2 kids mostly alone after his wife passed when Derek was 11. He had driven 4.5 hours because his son's assistant agency called the emergency contact on file, which was him, after the 7th person quit, and no replacement had been lined up yet, and Derek had not called anyone. Had not called anyone. That was the part Marcus had not been able to sit with. He had tried. He had sat in his kitchen in the house he still owned outright, the house where Derek had grown up, and he had tried to be reasonable about it. A man had a right to handle his own life. A man who had built a company from a hospital bed had earned the right to handle his problems himself. He had sat with that for about 40 minutes. Then he had packed the suitcase. He stood at the window of the spare bedroom that night and looked out at the driveway. The neighborhood was quiet. The houses on either side were big and dark, the kind of neighborhood where people had enough space between them that you never really heard your neighbors living. Very different from the place Derek grew up, where you could hear everything through the walls. Dinner conversations, arguments, television sets, the particular way every family in the building sounded slightly different when they were tired. Derek had bought this house for its accessibility features and its silence, Marcus figured. Both made sense. Both cost extra. He listened to the sound of his son still working at 11 o'clock at night, the faint glow of the office visible under the hallway door, the occasional click of a keyboard that never seemed to stop. He thought about the list on the refrigerator. 7 people, 7 red lines. He was not here to become the 8th. He did not know exactly what he was here to do, not in terms that fit neatly into a sentence. He was not a trained caregiver. He was not a medical professional. He had looked up spinal cord injury basics on his phone on the drive over and had learned enough to know that there was far more he did not know. But he knew his son, had known him for 34 years, had watched him go from a kid who carried too much without complaint to a man who had turned that same quality into a company worth more money than Marcus could picture if he tried. Had watched the accident news come through like a wall falling, had driven to that hospital at 2 in the morning and sat in a waiting room chair until his back ached and his coffee went cold, and a doctor finally came out to tell him things he had to hear twice before they became real. Had watched Derek, in that hospital bed, start making calls on day 3. Business calls. Had watched the nurses react to it with something between admiration and concern, unsure whether to stop him or not. He had not stopped him either. That was Derek. You did not stop him. You learned what he actually needed, and you provided it without commentary, and you did not make it into a production. The light under the office door went out at 11:42. Marcus stood at the window a little longer. Then he went to bed. In the morning he was up at 5. He made coffee. He found the grocery bags he had bought last night from the store 3 minutes from the house, which he had located on his phone while Derek was still working. He put things away in the refrigerator. He made breakfast before Derek was out of his room. When Derek came out at 6:30, the kitchen smelled like food and the coffee was fresh, and Marcus was reading something on his phone at the table, as though he had been there for hours, which he had. Derek stopped at the edge of the kitchen. He looked at the counter, at the full refrigerator, door slightly open from Marcus having just put the last item in. At the plate, Marcus slid wordlessly to the part of the table where the gap was. He pulled up to the table. He picked up the fork. He did not say thank you. Marcus did not wait for it. Outside the window, the morning was coming up gray and slow over the wide, quiet street. Inside, the two of them ate breakfast together for the first time in 4 years, and neither one of them said a word about it, and that was exactly how it needed to be. The 7 names stayed folded on the counter. Marcus would throw them away later, when the time was right. For now, he just drank his coffee and let the morning be what it was. The first full day was a study in resistance. Not the kind that shouts, not the kind that slams doors or throws things or makes a scene. Derek was far too controlled for any of that. His resistance was architectural, built into the structure of every instruction he gave, every correction he offered, every task he described in the most precise and demanding language possible, as though he were testing the limits of a new piece of equipment rather than talking to his father. Marcus understood this. He did not say he understood it. He just absorbed it and kept moving. The morning care routine was the first thing. Derek walked him through it with the detachment of a man narrating a technical manual. Positioning, transfer protocols, the specific sequence of steps that had been established over months of trial and error with medical teams, refined to an exact order that reduced risk and preserved function. He described each step once, clearly, and did not repeat himself. Marcus listened. He asked 2 questions, both about safety clearances, angles and weight distribution, and did not ask anything else. When it was time to do it, he did it wrong twice. Not dangerously, not carelessly, but wrong in the way any person is wrong the first time they do something that requires muscle memory they have not built yet. Derek corrected him both times. Flat voice. No theatrics. Just the correction and then silence waiting for the adjustment. Marcus adjusted. No explanation. No apology. Just the change. By the 3rd attempt it was close enough. Not perfect. Close enough. The last one did this for 3 days before he got it right, Derek said, and it was impossible to tell from his voice whether this was information or a challenge. Marcus did not answer. He moved to the next step. The morning took twice as long as it normally would have. Marcus knew this without being told. He could feel the time stretching, could feel Derek's patience pulling tight at the edges. He did not rush. Rushing was how people made mistakes with things that mattered, and this mattered, even if neither of them was going to say so out loud. By 8 o'clock, Derek was at his desk and working, and Marcus was in the kitchen making a list of everything he had just done, step by step, in the small notepad from the drawer. He wrote it out in plain language, numbered it. He would read it back before tomorrow morning, and correct anything he had missed. At 9, Derek called out from the office. There's a medical supply box in the closet near the bathroom. 2nd shelf. I need the wrist brace from it. Marcus found the closet, found the shelf, found the box. It was well organized, labeled in Derek's handwriting, everything in its place. The kind of system a man builds when he has learned that depending on other people finding the right thing is a liability. Marcus found the wrist brace, brought it in, and held it out. Derek fitted it without looking up from the screen. Marcus watched the technique, where it sat on the wrist, how tight it went, and filed it away. He went back to the kitchen. At 10:30, Derek came out of the office and found Marcus in the hallway with a tape measure. He stopped the chair. "What are you doing?" "Measuring the turn radius from the bathroom to the bedroom," Marcus said. "You've got a scratch on the wall here. Happened more than once." Derek looked at the wall. There was a faint scuff mark at chair height, barely visible if you were not looking for it. "I know about it." "Want me to look at the turn angle?" "I know about it," Derek said again. He said it the same way both times, but the second time had something extra in it. A message. Marcus heard the message clearly. "This is my house, my chair, my problem, and I did not ask for your opinion about my walls." "Okay," Marcus said. He folded the tape measure and put it in his pocket. Derek watched him do it. Then he went back to the office. Marcus looked at the scuff on the wall for another second. Then he went to find the cleaning supplies. Lunch came and went. Marcus made something simple, brought it to the office, set it down without interrupting the call Derek was on. Derek ate while he talked and did not acknowledge the food being placed there. Marcus went back to the kitchen and ate standing up, reading through the notes he had made about the morning. The afternoon was quieter. Derek worked. Marcus learned the house, where things were, how the systems operated, what the emergency buttons did, where the medical kit was fully stocked. He did not rearrange anything. He did not move a single item from where Derek had put it. He only looked and learned and memorized. At 3 in the afternoon, a delivery arrived. A large box. Marcus signed for it and brought it in and set it near the office door. "Adaptive keyboard," Derek said without being asked. "Just leave it there." Marcus left it there. An hour later, without comment, he set a glass of water on the desk beside the box. Derek glanced at it, picked it up, drank half of it. Marcus went back to the hallway. This was the work. Not dramatic. Not anything you could point to and call a breakthrough. Just the steady accumulation of presence. Of small things done correctly and without commentary. Of needs anticipated and met before they had to be asked for. It was the least glamorous form of care. It was also the most sustaining. The previous 7 had all, in their own ways, been waiting for a signal. A moment where the dynamic would soften, where Derek would acknowledge them, where the balance of effort would distribute more evenly. They had been trained to expect a certain kind of relationship with a client, something that involved communication, feedback, gradual trust. Derek did not build trust gradually. He tested you until you were either still standing or gone, and if you were still standing, he used you efficiently and did not waste time on ceremony. That was the entire system. It was not broken. It was just very specifically not designed for people who needed acknowledgement to keep going. Marcus Hale had spent 31 years in a trade where the work spoke entirely for itself. No one thanked the electrician when the lights worked. They only called you when they didn't. You showed up, you solved the problem, you went home. The gratitude was in the electricity flowing properly. That was it. That was enough. By 5 o'clock, Derek had been on calls for most of the afternoon. Marcus could hear the rhythm of the conversations without making out the words. Derek's voice shifting registers depending on who he was talking to, sharpening with certain people, going brief and direct with others. He was good at this. He had always been good at reading what people needed from a conversation and calibrating himself precisely to it. Except, Marcus thought, with the people in his house. That calculus he had not solved, or had not tried to. Dinner was quiet again. Marcus made something real. Not complicated, but actual food. The kind that took time on the stove. Derek came to the table and ate with focus, the way he always ate, as though fueling was a task to be completed efficiently. Halfway through, without looking up, he said, "You wrote down the morning steps." "Yes." "I saw the notepad." "Okay." A pause. Derek took a drink of water. "The positioning for the transfer. You had the angle slightly off in step 3. Write a correction." Marcus pulled out the notepad. He wrote the correction while Derek described it. Same flat voice, same precision. He wrote it down and put the pad away. "The first assistant," Derek said, after a moment, "argued with me about step 3 for 4 days. Said his training method was different. He picked up his fork. He lasted 5 days total. Marcus thought about this. What happened on day 5? He came in and led with an apology about the argument, and I decided I was done. The apology did it. The apology meant he had been thinking about the argument for 4 days instead of thinking about the work. Derek looked up then, briefly, directly. I don't need people thinking about whether I'm treating them fairly. I need people thinking about the job. Marcus held his gaze. I wrote down the correction. Something moved in Derek's face. Not a smile. Not exactly. But something in the same family as recognition. He went back to his food. Marcus went back to his. Outside it had gone dark, the neighborhood settling into its expensive quietness. Inside, the kitchen lights were warm and the food was good, and the two of them sat at the table together, without either of them making anything of it. Day 1 ended. Marcus crossed nothing off any list. He did not have a list of names. He was not counting days. He washed the dishes, dried them, put them away, and went to read his notes in the spare room until he was tired enough to sleep. Day 2 started at 5. He was ready. The call came at 4:12 in the morning. Not a phone call. The house system. A quiet, two-tone sound that came through the small speaker panel near the bedroom door. The kind of alert that was designed to be heard without jarring a person awake violently. Marcus had read the manual for the system on his second day in the house, sitting at the kitchen table while Derek worked, going through it page by page the same way he used to read equipment manuals before a job. He was awake before the second tone finished. He sat up, listened. The alert was from the motion and positioning sensor in Derek's room, a system that monitored for unexpected stillness or positional changes outside of normal sleep patterns. It was a safety net, not a crisis alarm. 2 tones meant check, not emergency. Marcus was in the hallway in 30 seconds. He stood outside Derek's door. He did not knock. He listened. The room was not silent. He could hear his son breathing. Steady, controlled. The breathing of a man who is awake and has been awake for some time and is managing it the way he managed most things, with careful internal structure. Marcus sat down on the floor in the hallway, his back against the wall beside the door. Not inside, not demanding entry, just there. A full minute passed. Then from inside, "You can go back to bed." "I know," Marcus said. Another minute. The house was extraordinarily quiet at this hour, the kind of quiet that has weight to it. "The sensor's been misfiring," Derek said through the door. "I've already logged it. There's nothing wrong." "Good," Marcus said. Silence. He did not move. He was comfortable enough on the floor, or at least familiar enough with discomfort to sit with it without complaint. He had slept in worse places during long jobs. A hallway floor at 4 in the morning was not hardship. He heard Derek shift, the soft mechanical sound of the bed's adjustable positioning changing slightly. "You're still there," Derek said. "Yes." A beat. Then, "Why?" Marcus thought about this for a moment, not because he did not know the answer, but because he wanted to give the right portion of it. "Because it's 4 in the morning, and neither of us is asleep." The door did not open. It did not need to. There was something about a door between two people that allowed certain things to be said that could not be said face to face. Some easing of the pressure that made words come out differently. Derek was quiet for a while. Then, not loudly, just into the space, "I lost the Granger account today." Marcus waited. 3-year relationship, since before the accident. They sent an email. Their logistics needs had grown beyond what I could accommodate, they said. He paused. "That's what they said. Is that what they meant?" A long silence. "Gary Granger came to the hospital once, right after. He sat in the room for about 10 minutes and could not look at me directly even once. He kept talking to the nurse." Another pause. "When I was discharged and went back to work, he was very enthusiastic on the phone, very supportive. He used the word inspiring twice in one call." Marcus did not say anything. "He meant it kindly," Derek said, and the way he said it was the most precise description of a particular kind of loneliness that Marcus had ever heard. He absolutely meant it kindly. Marcus leaned his head back against the wall. He stared at the ceiling. "I have been very careful," Derek said, "about which rooms I walk into, which conferences, Which meetings? I have been deliberate about it. Sending representation when I felt the environment would not, when I thought the reception would be. He stopped, started again differently. I sent Nathan to the Portland Summit in March. Nathan is excellent, sharp, prepared, knows the material as well as anyone. I briefed him for a week. How'd it go? It went fine. Nathan did well. We got 3 contacts from it. A pause. I stayed home. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, that summit was about freight corridor development? Yes. That's your core business. Yes. And you sent someone else. Silence. You gonna let a room decide whether you walk into it? Marcus said. It was not a lecture. Not a challenge either. Not quite. It came out like something a man says when he has been holding it for a while, and the dark and the quiet finally made it small enough to say. Derek did not answer. Marcus did not push it. He did not follow it up with reasons or advice, or a speech about confidence and self-worth. He had said the one thing, and he left it where it landed, and that was all. The house was very still. After a while, Marcus heard the bed shift again, the positioning mechanism adjusting, the specific sound of a man settling back into the intention of sleep. The sensor needs a firmware update, Derek said. His voice was different now. Not softer exactly, but different in a way that was difficult to name. I'll have the tech company send someone this week. I'll be here, Marcus said. He stood up from the floor. His knees registered the complaint they always registered these days when he had been sitting on hard surfaces. He ignored them. Go to sleep, Derek said. Working on it, Marcus said. He walked back to the spare room and lay down on top of the covers and stared at the ceiling for a while. He thought about Gary Granger, and the word inspiring, said twice in a phone call. He thought about Nathan at a conference that Derek should have been at. He thought about his son, who was the sharpest man he knew, who had built something real, and difficult, and valuable, from the worst moment of his life, who was making himself smaller, to fit into a world that had not earned that concession. He thought about the Granger email. Then he thought about something else. The way Derek had said 3-year relationship. Not 3-year account. Relationship. The word mattered. The loss was not purely financial. It was the ordinary grief of a connection that had not survived something that should not have ended connections. And Derek was sitting with that in the dark at 4 a.m, alone. The way he sat with most things. Marcus closed his eyes. He was up again at 5. He did not mention the conversation. He made coffee, started the morning, moved through the routine with the precision he had been accumulating day by day, the steps now closer to second nature than they had been that first morning when everything took twice as long. Derek came out of his room, looking exactly the same as every other morning. Pressed, controlled, ready. He sat at the table and picked up the coffee Marcus had poured and drank it, and nothing in his face or posture suggested that anything had passed between them in the hallway the night before. Marcus sat across from him and drank his own coffee and read his phone. Normal morning. Ordinary Tuesday. "11 days later, Marcus was in the kitchen when he heard Derek on a call in the office, voice crisp and decisive, moving through negotiation points with the kind of clarity that made people on the other end of the line think they were getting the better deal, right up until they realized they were not. He was finalizing a contract. Marcus did not go to the door. He did not need to. He could hear enough from the kitchen, the shape of it, the terms being locked in, the particular way Derek's voice landed when something was settled. When the call ended, Marcus poured a fresh cup of coffee and set it on the desk in the office without a word, and went back to the kitchen. A few minutes later, from the office, Granger signed back on this morning. Marcus looked up from the stove. Good contract? Better than the original. He turned back to the stove. Good. That was the whole exchange. No celebration, no lengthy discussion of what had changed or how it had happened, or what it meant. The contract was done. The work continued. That was the structure of this life, and Marcus had by now fitted himself into it, the way a tool fits a task. Completely, without excess. But he stood at the stove for a moment after that, his back to the hallway, and he allowed himself the quiet, private satisfaction of knowing that something had shifted. Not because of a speech, not because of an intervention, or a dramatic conversation, or a moment of breakthrough that anyone could photograph and call a turning point. Because of a question asked at 4 in the morning in the dark, through a closed door, where no one had to look at anyone, and the question had been left to do its work on its own. You gonna let a room decide whether you walk into it? He had not. The stove clicked. Marcus adjusted the heat and went back to cooking. The journalist's name was Claire Abbott. She was 31, came from a publication that covered business and entrepreneurship, and she had the particular energy of someone who had done enough interviews to be comfortable, but not so many that she had stopped caring about the answers. She arrived exactly on time, which Marcus noted as a good sign, and she was professional and well prepared, and she shook Derek's hand with the confidence of someone who had made a point of not making a production out of the handshake. Marcus had watched that moment from the hallway. He had watched Derek watch her, the brief, fast calculation behind Derek's eyes, assessing, categorizing, deciding how much to give. He had seen Derek decide she was worth his real attention, which was the best version of Derek anyone was going to get. He retreated to the kitchen. He could hear the interview from there. Not every word but the shape of it, the rhythm of questions asked and answers given. Claire Abbott asked good questions. She was not interested in the accident. She was interested in the business, the decisions, the thinking. She asked about supply chain philosophy, about how Derek had restructured his operations model, about what he saw coming in freight and logistics over the next decade. Derek's voice stayed even and engaged throughout. He was good at this. He had always been a person who could organize complex ideas into clear language at speed, who could make you understand in 2 sentences what would take most people a paragraph to get through. It was one of the things that had made him difficult to keep up with even before anything else changed. Marcus made tea. He was not a tea person particularly, but the afternoon called for something slower than coffee, and he had found a box of it in the cabinet. He sat at the kitchen table and listened. The interview came around, near the end, to a question he heard clearly, because Claire Abbott's voice carried, "You've built something remarkable in what most people would call extremely difficult circumstances. What does your support system look like? Who do you lean on?" The pause that followed was about 2 seconds long. 2 seconds is not very long in most contexts. In a flowing conversation, it is a lifetime. "I have very good staff," Derek said. "Skilled people around me. The company runs on good people." "And personally?" Claire Abbott said, gently, not pushing, just leaving the door open. Another pause, shorter this time. "I'm fortunate to have people in my corner." Marcus held his teacup. He heard the interview wrap up a few minutes later, heard the sound of Claire Abbott thanking Derek, heard the front door open and close. He did not move from the kitchen table. Derek came in 20 minutes later. He moved to his usual position at the table and said nothing. His face was composed in its normal way, everything organized, nothing spilling over. He looked at the window. Marcus got up and put the kettle back on. He found a second cup. He set a cup of tea in front of Derek, which was not something Derek had ever asked for, and went back to his side of the table. Derek looked at the cup. He picked it up. He was quiet for a long time. "She asked a good question," he said finally. Marcus said nothing. He waited. "About support." Derek turned the cup slowly in both hands, not drinking, just the motion. "I almost said something else." "What did you almost say?" Derek looked at the table. His jaw moved once, the small muscle at the edge of it. "My father is here. That's what I almost said." Marcus looked at his own tea. "I don't know why I didn't say it," Derek said. Marcus picked up his cup. "Yes, you do." Derek was quiet. "Saying it out loud to a journalist changes it," Marcus said. "Makes it a thing. You wanted it to stay what it is." Derek's hands stilled around the cup. Something moved across his face, subtle and fast, like weather crossing a landscape. "What is it?" he said, and it was not entirely a rhetorical question. Marcus thought about it. He thought about the 4-hour drive, and the 7 crossed-out names, and the cold coffee and the empty refrigerator. He thought about 4 in the morning on a hallway floor. He thought about a kettle starting up at 5 every morning, and a notepad full of corrections, and a scuff mark on a wall that he had eventually, quietly, fixed without saying a word about it. He thought about 34 years. "It's just us," he said. "It doesn't need a name." Derek looked at him then. Directly. The way he rarely did. Not the glancing assessment he used for most interactions, but the full, unguarded thing. The version of his face that was 34 years old and 11 years old at the same time. Marcus held it, did not look away, did not soften it or qualify it or fill the space with anything. Then Derek nodded, once, small, and looked back at the window. He drank the tea. Marcus drank his. Outside, the afternoon was doing what afternoons did, shifting slowly toward evening, the light coming down through the windows at a lower angle, the neighborhood making its quiet sounds. Inside, the kitchen was warm, and the tea was good, and nothing about the moment looked like anything that would be written about in a business magazine. That was fine. That was the point. Later that evening, when Marcus was in the spare room reviewing the week's schedule he had written up for the new assistant who would be starting Monday, a woman named Donna, experienced and calm, who had come recommended by the agency after Marcus had specified exactly what kind of person they should be sending. He could hear Derek on a call in the office. Not a business call this time. The tone was different, lighter. He was talking to someone he liked, maybe an old colleague, maybe a friend. Marcus could not tell. But Derek was laughing at something. A real laugh, not the polished professional version. The unguarded one. Marcus had not heard that in a while. He went back to the schedule. He had written everything out for Donna in clear, simple steps. Every protocol, every preference, every small thing that mattered and why it mattered. He had spent 3 days putting it together, the same care he would have put into a wiring diagram for a complex installation. Nothing left to assumption, nothing that required guessing. At the bottom of the last page he had written one line that was not a protocol, just a note. He had written, "He does not need admiration. He needs reliability. If you come every day and do the work well, and do not require him to manage your feelings about doing the work, you will be fine." He looked at it for a moment. Then he put the folder on the nightstand and turned the light out. The house was quiet. Derek's call had ended. The office light was still on. He could see the faint glow under the hallway door, but the keyboard had gone silent, which meant he was reading or thinking rather than working. Marcus lay in the dark and thought about the drive home in a few days, and the house he had left behind, and the things that had needed doing on it that had been waiting for him. The gutter on the east side, the fence post in the backyard, small things. He thought about Claire Abbott's question and the 2-second pause that had followed it. He thought about the laugh he had just heard through the wall. He closed his eyes. Down the hall, the office light went out. The last morning came on a Thursday. Marcus was up at 5 as he always was. He made coffee as he always did. He moved through the kitchen with the ease of someone who had learned a space well enough to navigate it in the dark, which he had done more than once. But this morning was different, and both of them knew it, and neither of them addressed it directly, which was the only appropriate way to handle it. Donna had been in the house for 3 weeks now. She was good. Marcus had been right about her, reliable, professional, calm in the way that came from genuine competence rather than performance. She had learned the morning routine in 2 days, had asked precise questions, and then stopped asking once she had the answers, had established a working rhythm with Derek that was not warm exactly, but was functional in all the ways that mattered. Derek had corrected her 4 times in the first week. She had made the corrections without comment. He had not corrected her since. On her 5th day, Marcus had found a brief, unsigned note on the kitchen counter that said, "She's fine." He had not mentioned it. He had thrown it away and started the kettle. Now he sat at the kitchen table with his suitcase packed and sitting in the hallway. He had already gone through the house once to make sure he had not left anything, which he had not, and then he had gone through once more, because that was the kind of person he was. He had his coffee. He had his phone. He had his coat on the back of the chair. Derek came out of his room at 6:30, same as every morning. He came to the table. Donna was off until 10, so the morning had run the way it had run since the beginning. The two of them together in the kitchen, the routine executed without much conversation. After it was done and Derek was at the table with his coffee, Marcus sat across from him, and they were quiet in the way they had become comfortable with. A silence that was not empty but full of the particular texture of people who had learned each other's rhythms over weeks of close proximity. "Flight's at 6, Derek said. "I know," Marcus said. A pause. The coffee steamed between them. "Donna has the schedule," Derek said. "She knows the protocols." "She knows them," Marcus agreed. "I've arranged for a car service to take you to the airport. It will be here at 3. I can call one myself." "It's already arranged," Derek said. Marcus picked up his coffee. "Okay." Another silence. Outside, the morning was coming in through the window, pale and clear, the kind of early light that makes ordinary things look briefly significant. "I'm going to the Denver conference in September," Derek said. He said it the way he might announce a schedule change. Factual, brief, his eyes on his coffee cup. Marcus looked at him. "Freight Industry Summit," Derek continued. "I was going to send someone. I changed my mind." A pause. "I registered yesterday." Marcus did not say anything for a moment. He sat with it. He thought about a closed door and 4 in the morning, and a question that had been left to do its work. "Good," he said. "It's a 3-day event," Derek said. "Nathan will come, but I'll be there." "Good," Marcus said again. Derek drank his coffee. The morning passed in the ordinary way. Donna arrived at 10 and moved through the house with the quiet efficiency she had developed over the weeks. And Marcus watched her work for a while without her knowing he was watching, not checking on her but simply observing, the way he always did with things he had built and was preparing to hand over. She was good. At noon, Marcus made lunch for the last time in that kitchen. He made something simple. He did not make anything elaborate or special. That would have made it a thing, and he had told Derek, had told himself, that it did not need to be a thing. They ate. Derek talked through a contract issue briefly over lunch, thinking out loud the way he sometimes did, and Marcus listened and asked 1 or 2 practical questions, and they worked through it together at the table, the way they had worked through a dozen other things over the past months. When the plates were cleared, Derek said, "I'm buying you a car. I've already looked into it." Marcus dried his hands on the dish towel. "No. The truck you're driving is 14 years old. I know how old my truck is. It needs work. I do the work myself." "Dad?" The word landed differently than it usually did, quieter, stripped of the usual management it traveled with. Marcus turned around. He looked at his son. "Let me buy you the car," Derek said. He said it plainly, not as a power move, not as a transaction, just plainly, the way a person says something they mean. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "The truck's fine," he said. "But if it's not fine in 6 months, I'll tell you." Something passed across Derek's face. Not the cracking he so carefully prevented, but a loosening, small, real. "Okay," Derek said. Marcus nodded. He put the dish towel on the counter. At 3 o'clock the car arrived. Marcus picked up his suitcase from the hallway, same suitcase, same bag, and carried them to the front door. He looked back through the hallway at the house, the wide doorways, the smooth floors, the 3-screen desk visible through the office door, where Derek was now on a call, voice crisp and clear, working the way he always worked. Donna was in the kitchen, wiping down the counter. She looked up and gave him a small nod. He nodded back. He went to the office doorway. Derek was mid-call, but he turned the chair slightly, just slightly, and met his father's eyes for one brief moment. A look that carried weight, that carried weeks, that did not try to carry more than the moment could hold. Marcus lifted his chin, once. He turned and walked to the front door. He opened it. The morning air from earlier had given way to afternoon, warmer, the light coming down through the trees that lined the wide street. He put his suitcase in the car. He sat in the back seat, and the car pulled away from the house, and he watched it through the window until the street curved, and it was gone. He sat back. The city moved past the windows, intersections, streetlights, people walking, the ordinary motion of a place going about its business. He thought about the list he had taken off the refrigerator. 7 names in red. He had thrown it away on the 3rd day. He had not thought about it since. He thought about Donna in the kitchen, learning the space the way he had learned it, through practice, through precision, through showing up every morning and doing the work without requiring the work to reward her. He thought about September, Denver, a conference Derek would walk into himself. He thought about the truck in his driveway back home, which needed the belt looked at, and the front left tire rotated. He thought about the gutter, and the fence post, and the quiet, ordinary work of his own house waiting for him. The city thinned out, and the highway opened up. Marcus closed his eyes. He was tired in the way a person is tired at the end of something that mattered. Not depleted, not empty, but settled. The tiredness of effort well spent. He thought about the last thing Derek had said to him before the afternoon call started. Not in the office, not out loud, but in the particular language the two of them had developed over 58 years on one side and 34 on the other. The language of a nod, a look, a small change in the set of a jaw. He had heard it clearly. He always had. Donna was in that house now. She would be there tomorrow morning at 6. She would make the coffee and run the routine, and manage the protocols she had learned, and not wait for anyone to thank her. She would last because she had been trained by someone who understood the nature of the work. Not as caregiving in the soft sense people usually meant, but as reliability, as showing up, as doing the thing well and then doing it again. The first day Marcus had shown up, there had been 7 names crossed out in red on a refrigerator. Monday morning, Donna had arrived and done the work. Nobody was counting days anymore. The highway stretched out ahead. Marcus settled back against the seat and let the miles come. He was going home. That was enough.